Hello and welcome to another podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. We are back talking about Championship Manager FPL and I'm joined by Luke as always. How are you doing?
Just about got over my Shearer captaincy injury. It's taken me a sleepless night, but I've managed to drag myself out of bed and be here for you, Andy.
Yeah, I see a lot of people frustrated about Alan Shearer. We're going to talk about him, find out how long he's injured for as well. Outside of that, how did you get on this week?
I didn't do too bad. I got 55 in the end, and that was with. Did I get 55 or was my thing reverted? I got around 50 points. I can't remember what it is now, and I took a -8. So going into the week, I was hoping just to kind of stay around the average. Considering that hit and a lot of people would be on free hits and all that sort of stuff. So I'm fairly happy. Rebrov coming through with 2 assists was great. Obviously, I've talked about the Shearer captain. That was not great. I didn't expect anything from my midfield because I had 2 Fulham away to Chelsea. Luckily, Stolz's scored, so that was great. And then Scowcroft with his last-minute goal again basically changed the game week for me a little bit. And apart from that, Arsenal double defence was really what I was relying. Going into the game week, I really needed an Arsenal clean sheet and Shearer to score to make average. So I kind of got half of that and then got a couple of surprises. So pretty happy overall.
Yeah, I had a similar-ish week, pretty decent. I think I finished on 60, but I took a 4-point hit, so it would have been 56. Double Arsenal clean sheet, double Ipswich clean sheet as well. Honestly, there's part of me that would just go 5-2-3 at this point. They're just lacking midfielders or whatever. But Ipswich, the only one I don't have is Hariderson, which is a bit annoying because he's the one that always seems to get the bonus. But the other two are pretty decent as well. And because of all the stuff that happened with Man United blanking, I took out Ruud van Nistelrooy and put in Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank. So when he scored in the second minute, I thought, here we go, big score coming. And the same thing happened with Shearer a couple of weeks ago. He scored within 2 minutes, he'd scored, and then that was it for the rest of the game. I think it's the hope that kills you. So he came in, which was good, I suppose. And Kevin Davis, after we spoke about him last week, he didn't play the week before, but he played this week and got an assist. So overall, pretty good week, and I had Stolz's as well. So happy with that. But it's about to get a whole lot more confusing, at least for people like me. We're going to talk about the fixtures. There's a bunch of double game weeks now been confirmed. So I'm going to bring up an image. So this is from Ben Krellin's spreadsheet, which I think is open for the public, right? He's got it open to everyone. Anyone can go and see this, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to just talk us through this and what's kind of happened and been confirmed?
I shall try my best because I am definitely not a fixtures expert. You want to go to at Ben Krellin2 on Twitter, his second account, and he tweets a lot of this stuff out. And he's got Google Sheets with all this fantastic information, with all the permutations of what can happen in the double game week nicely laid out for you there. However, I shall try my best. So it's not fully updated yet, what we're seeing in front of us. Essentially, 14 is as we see. There shouldn't be any worries there. I'm not going to say 100%. We never know with this game, right? It seems to be things that spring up out of nowhere. But looks like 14's okay. 15, the ones that are in sort of bright yellow, almost gold colour, are confirmed double game weeks. The ones in slightly orange are not confirmed yet. We'll have to wait until Sunday. So after this game week on Sunday, we'll have the stream and we should have all the information on whether those are doubles or not. The only exceptions to this are Charlton's game, double Liverpool versus and Derby is confirmed as well now as a result of some League Cup games. And Derby versus Charlton, which is red, is now just a single fixture. So Derby do have that game. So the only team that blank in 15 are Leeds. So that's where we are for 15. For 16, the double for Liverpool and Fulham, I believe, or I'm not sure about Fulham. I think it could be Fulham as well. I'm not 100%, but Liverpool's definitely, and I'm pretty sure Fulham's as well, is on. Could be wrong on that part, though. Again, read the permutations, not an expert. And 17 is the whole gold thing again. So the 2 gold ones, Man United and Middlesbrough, definitely got a double. Whereas Liverpool and Tottenham, we're not sure yet. We won't know that until later. I think that relies on possibly Walsall beating Liverpool in the Cup at some point. So we can't really plan for it. We just have to, there's a chance it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, that fixture run there for Liverpool then looks pretty good with the double game week. Has any of this kind of changed your thinking? I don't know, what is your current kind of chip strategy or chip thinking as it stands? Or are you just kind of still playing it by ear, waiting until the fixtures are kind of all released?
Yeah, so when obviously this Man United Middlesbrough game got called off and threw all our plans out the window, I didn't really have too much in mind. I just wanted to play what was in front of me. And in the back of my mind, I've got the free hit to use in 15 if I need it. So my plan is basically to get to 15, see where I'm at my team. Very, very likely have to use the free hit if I want to take advantage of a lot of the doubles. However, as you can see, a lot of the teams that are playing in doubles aren't really the best teams. So it's a decision as to whether, I mean, for example, you've got Man United playing away to Newcastle. So people might think, oh, away to Newcastle, not a great game, but through Man United smashed Newcastle away in most of my sims. So do I suddenly want to take out, Van Nistelrooy, Veron, the likes of those players who could easily outscore the doubles? We have these sort of conversations in FPL all the
Yeah,
time,
all the
don't we?
time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be what kind of manager you are, what way you're going. So I'm going to get to 15, probably use the free hit, not dead set on it, and then go from there. Really, I think.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking similar. I listened to James and Suge did one on Planet FPL. They talked about this, and they basically said a very similar thing, that a lot of the teams that are doubling have not, you're probably going to want Scowcroft, for example, Sunderland and Blackburn, but then Fulham away, Man United away, Bolton away, maybe not so much then. So yeah, maybe a free hit will be good. I'm just going to get to it and just see what my team looks like. I think the one, maybe you disagree with this, but I think in this, not that it's predictable. Sometimes I feel like it is so unpredictable that would make me not necessarily want to go completely for double game weekers. Whereas Man United, they feel they're fixture proof, etc. So you're probably not going to want to get rid of them. I don't know what you feel about that. Like in FPL, I feel like maybe I've explained that badly. In FPL, I would maybe just go for the doubles because football is unpredictable. Whereas in this, I feel like the really cheap midfielders, for example, apart from the ones we've already talked about plenty of times, they're just probably not going to do much anyway.
I completely agree with that. This game is more predictable in the results because of the matchups. I mean, it was pretty obvious that Chelsea were going to do pretty well against Fulham in terms of shot volume. The result was often varied when I looked at the sim. Like Fulham would occasionally get a draw, but Chelsea would always smash them as in terms of shots and usually win. And you could kind of predict Jimmy. Jimmy was the obvious captain if you had one, a free hit team. He was the obvious captain this week. So that kind of factor that you're talking about there, where like you say, Man United versus Newcastle was, Man United will probably win that comfortably, 2-3-0. They should do. Whereas then you look at some of the other double teams, and it's going to be more about, because bonus is so important in this game. If they're going to play both games and they've got a chance of bonus, it could work out beneficial for them anyway, if that makes sense, more through the bonus than their performance. So yeah, it's another conversation to have, but. Yeah, I do agree with what you're saying there. That it's predictable in terms of teams' returns quite a lot of the time in their matchup.
Yeah, that's that's basically what I'm going to wait until game week 15 to finally decide. All right, let's talk more about kind of the upcoming game week and what's happened in the last one. So Alan Shearer injured, 38th minute. No goals, no assists in this game. Absolute unfortunate for people like you that captain him. And I'd say quite a few. Did you captain him? Sorry, did you captain him in this game?
I did captain him. I think he was the most captain player. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's harsh. Yeah, of course, Man United blanked. So he's out for 2 weeks, I think is the news for that. So, I mean, we can talk about this in general, who's going to come in for him and kind of replacements. We've actually got two community questions on this. So Talha Nadeem said, Shearer replacement already has Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank and doesn't necessarily want to double with Ida Johnson. And with Viduka blanking in game week 15 and 16 and only 10 million spent, I think this is... The other question is very similar. Who's the best striker for about 10 or 11 million? So I guess what they're saying is they can't go to Ruud van Nistelrooy or Henry or whoever it might be.
Okay.
So who do you think, I mean, in general, who do you think is the best option? And if you're not going to double Chelsea and Viduka's blanking, like someone like Rebrov maybe?
Yeah, so if we discount Van Nistelrooy and Henry, which I think are obviously fantastic this week, even though Henry's away at Fulham, that is a really good fixture for him on paper. So, yeah, he's arguably a good captain on that day. So I don't really like the Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank move now. Although the game versus Tottenham, away to Tottenham, doesn't look great on paper, it can actually be pretty good. That will be a pretty open game it should have goals in it. I've seen lots of 3-3s, for example. So he could do well in that fixture. A lot of this is going to come down to strategy, obviously. If they don't have a double or whether you're free hitting in 15 is going to impact a lot of it. But I'm just going to avoid 15 because everyone's going to do a different thing there. So we go past that. We look, Jimmy's got away to Man United and away to Middlesbrough, away to Ipswich. Now, he's not the most consistent of strikers across the teams. He hasn't been particularly consistent this one. Last week was just a very good matchup for him. So I would avoid any Chelsea strikers, to be honest, given their fixtures. Plus, you also add Carboni into the mix now, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but adds a little bit more rotation. So I personally wouldn't go there. For me, the single best one is still Viduka. Home to Charlton is an absolutely fantastic game. I've looked at lots of sims now. The guy is an absolute tank in that game. Better comes out better than Van Nistelrooy at home to Everton, for example. The problem being with that is he then blanks for 2 in a week, which again you can argue is not really a problem if you're going to free hit in 15, because then you only have one blank in 16. So obviously you get a free transfer after you come out of the free hit. So you could go straight to Viduka, captain him, play the game in front of you, differential over Van Nistelrooy, for example, or just have him and captain Van Nistelrooy if that's what you want to do. Free hit 15 and then use your transfer to come out of it and switch to someone else. I still think that's a pretty valid strategy. So I do kind of like that in a way, because we've seen playing the game week in front of you is often the play in this, rather than sort of plan too far ahead. The alternatives, I think Kevin Phillips is really under the radar. I really like him. He's obviously 0.5 less than Shearer, so if you're coming off Shearer from an injury, he looks really tempting to me. He's home to West Ham this week, which is a great fixture. 15 again, potentially a double, but we might be free hitting anyway, so we're going to ignore that. And then he's home to Charlton, home to Leeds, home to Blackburn. Now, home to Charlton's fantastic. Home to Leeds is pretty good as well. You know, it's not Leeds could beat Sunderland easily because they're a very offensive team. They're a good side in this, but away we've already seen how ropey they can be. So I don't think that's a particularly bad one for him. And then he's home to Blackburn, where they'll probably set up to defend, but they'll just kind of give the game up. You'd expect that to be 1 or 2-0. So I really like him. Plus he's got penalties, so he's very similar to Shearer in a way, where he plays for a, not quite a top tier side, but he's mainly the hog of all the goals from the team, and he has captains as a striker, which many of the other top team strikers don't. So as a result, when I was looking at Kevin Phillips, you'd often see, he might get an 8 and not do much, or get, not get a goal, or maybe get 1 assist, and then randomly he'd hit 3 or 4 in a game because he'd hit a hat trick, and then or maybe get a couple of penalties as well. So he's a very explosive option. So I think he's a really good shout as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and like you say, save a bit of money. And the other option is, of course, you don't have to spend all the 10 million. So Boxic has got really good fixtures. We've spoken about him loads. You could even go cheaper. If you wanted to go for a Spurs player, there's Red Rob or even Sheringham, right? If you wanted to go cheaper as well. And if you discount Game Week 15, they got pretty good fixtures. I mean, what do you think of that Chelsea game at home? Do you think that's an okay game for Spurs?
Yeah, it's a very good game for Spurs. Basically, when teams go away, and Chelsea won't necessarily play defensive mentality because they're a quite high reputation team. They'll probably play on a normal mentality. They won't play attackive, but they'll play normal. However, when teams have that 3 at the back, or 5 at the back with the wing backs, but 3 centre backs, and they try to play away from home in a non-attackive way, it results in a lot of goals quite a lot of the time. I mean, Bolton are a good example of this. They do it. Tottenham themselves are a very good example of this when they play away and they play on a normal mentality with 3 at the back. They ship goals for fun. And Chelsea have been the same this sim as well. So I say on paper, that Tottenham-Chelsea game has goals all over it. And as to which way it goes, you never know. Rebrov could end up doing nothing. They could lose 4-0, but it could be 4-3 and he scores 3 goals. So I really do like Rebrov. He's obviously got a fantastic run as well, straight after potentially the double in free hit. And then he's home to West Ham, potentially another double, but even if he's not, home to Derby and then home to Charlton. So Rebrov is an excellent shout, especially if they continue with that formation they've been running the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think he's 10.5 though, is he not? So he would actually cost a bit more. So yeah, if you've got a bit of money spare, maybe Rebrov. The other one I like, who has not stopped scoring since I sold him, is Pedersen.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, and again, if we discount 15, so Newcastle at home, Arsenal at home, okay, that's probably not the greatest fixture. Then Charlton, Leicester at home, and then West Ham away. So the fixture run, which I probably overlooked when I took him out, not that I was expecting to score against Man United, to be fair,
No.
is actually pretty good for him. And he would save you a bunch of money as well. So maybe as an alternative, if you didn't want to go Boxic, then just putting it out there, Pedersen might be a good option.
Totally agree with that. So if you're looking in a different bracket for whatever reason, I think Pedersen's definitely a shout. He's got all those home games. He's obviously shown that he's a good player. Across sims, he can get around 15 goals if he does well. He's pretty much on course for that. So I really like that. And same with Boxic. He's just got a fantastic. This week's not that great against Villa. It can be okay, but it's really after that where you've got home to Southampton, a confirmed double, both home games, and then home to Newcastle. A lot of home games in a run there. Which is really good. And also Sheringham, if you can't go all the way up to Rebrov, I think he's another one who's slightly under the radar. I mean, because of his age, I think people thought that he wasn't really that nailed for Tottenham. However, from what I've seen, it's always Everson that drops out if Salakovic goes to AMC, and Teddy continues in that double AMC role. And just at 7.5 is similar to Dwight York, where they've got potential for great because they play for a very offensive team, for one of the top attacking sides, and they can really be value. It's worked out for Teddy. It obviously hasn't for York so far.
Not yet. Your call on York is going to come sooner or later. I can feel it. All right, cool. Let's look at the injuries. So there has been some more confirmed injuries. I don't know if there's more than this, but these are kind of the standout ones. So we've got Kanu out for a month. Stanic is out for just a week. Saha also out for a week after. I don't know. Did he miss this week because of this, or was he just out of the squad and he also has an injury? Do we know?
Yeah, no. So Saha, he just wasn't first choice beforehand. Male came back, and we didn't know whether Saha would play or not once Male came back from his suspension, and he just reverted back to where he was before on the bench, unfortunately.
And then Risa is also out for 1 month. So, Risa's the big one, right, out of all of this. Is there any kind of permutations with that? Anyone going to come in that's interesting?
Well, quite a lot of people, I think, went for Kanu because of the 1 week punt or the free hit or the situation last week where we obviously lost out on all the Middlesbrough and Man United players. There was lots of people just looking for sort of 1 or 2 week punts depending on the chip strategy. And obviously Arsenal home to Sunderland. That didn't really work out. So Kanu's out for a month. That's going to have some sort of impact in terms of more for Jeffers than anyone else, who's 5.5 million. So I think usually Kanu and Jeffers rotate a little bit alongside Henry. And Bergkamp will occasionally go in there, but can more play as the AMC. So now it makes Jeffers a little bit more of a nicer option at 5.5. So he's got an impact. For the Risa one, Risa was never really nailed anyway, and he can play left back, he can play centre back, he can play left wing. I've seen him play up front when they had to. He's just got crazy versatility.
Ultimate out of position, that.
Yeah, unfortunately, he doesn't really do that well in any of the positions apart from left mid is really his best one. He can do all right at fullback. So again, it's just there's so many injuries. There's so much rotation at Liverpool anyway. It doesn't really affect anything apart. I mean, no one's going to be looking at Gregory Vignal, I wouldn't have thought. So, the likes of Carragher, etc., will come in at left back, and it just means that the wing is still rotatable position for Liverpool as it has been all season.
Yeah, with Saha, I mean, like you said, he wasn't nailed anyway, so I took him in as a bit of a punt. It didn't really work out, so it's a good excuse to just get rid of him. And I'm probably just going to go for one of those 7.5s we just spent a little while talking about. Any worries about Stanic? Just keep him in. He'll be back and carry on rotating.
I mean, he's only out for a week, but at the end of the day with Stanic, now that Carboni's been added to the mix, and the fact that he's just not playing the games, I'd really look to get rid of him now, especially as we just talked about Chelsea's fixture run. Is not great. So I would bail on Stanic now, I think.
There you go. Sell. The man has spoken. All right, we got quite a few questions. In fact, about, I don't know, like 10 or 11 or 12 questions came in. I don't even think this is all of them. So we'll just go through a few of them. This one was quite interesting. So this is from Heskebo. Said, how much sway do you give to not just the opposition, but the formation they're going to play? So the example is next week, Man United are going to play Everton. And this is how he's worded it. Everton will probably play the stupid spiral away at Man United. 3 midfielders covering the space Veron kind of plays in. Would that make Veron a worse captaincy option for you? Or do you just think it's a great fixture and it should be good for that one anyway?
No, it's a very good question because I strongly take note of the formation and more to do with the mentality than the formation, but also the formation as to how a team sets up. It depends whether a game can be open or not. I've talked about it before in a previous video. It's not always about home or away. There are some teams that don't care. Really, they'll play on a very open mentality. It's like everyone's played. Well, I assume everyone. A lot of people have played Championship Manager, Football Manager. There's all those different options. You can go literally click all out attack, and your entire team will just go up front. There's a good chance you can score a goal. There's also a good chance you'll concede 2 or 3 in that period. You probably only want to use that for 10 minutes in the game. In the more advanced Football Managers, you can sort of flick that on for 5-minute spells and stuff and do really well. So it's not quite to that level in this game, but it is there. So with Everton, they do play that spiral formation quite a lot, but they also play the one with 5 at the back and the 2 wing backs that bomb onto the centre midfield spot. So they don't always play the spiral. So it can't really be relied on. They're probably going to play one of those 2. However, the arrows generally mean when the team's got the ball, that's the position they'll go to. So in actual fact, although the spiral kind of shows 2 or 3 people going into that centre midfield place where Veron is, that's only when they've got the ball. How much of the ball are they actually going to have in this game? Probably none. So I don't think that affects it too much. And I still think he's a pretty good captain option nearly every week. I mean, I still think Van Nistelrooy is better than Veron for that game. However, I looked at 20 sims for Veron versus Everton. So 20 of them, and he scored 14 goals in the 20 games that he played. He got 7 assists and 7 man of the matches, which is pretty damn good. He got an average rating across the 20 games of 8.7 was the average score that he would get. So he's going to get, it looks like he's very likely to get bonus or a goal at least if he plays. The thing I will say is because it's a reputation 12 team in Everton, we've seen it once this season in this sim, but also I see it a lot in sims that Man United will occasionally rotate. Veron was the name that was left out quite a lot. I actually had to look at around 30 to 32 sims before I got Veron up to 20 games. So there's a chance he could miss the game. Don't want to panic people, but any reputation 12 team, there is a small chance.
Well, that is beautifully segued into the next question, which basically is that. Now we've seen the latest, this is from Jay Loveshanks, now we've seen the latest updates. How likely are we to see Man United rotation for the Everton game? Has there been a long enough gap in time for us to be less concerned? So, Veron potentially up for rotation. Anyone else, do you reckon?
So it's, again, it's not to do with the fact that they've not had enough rest. The players are very good players for Man United. They've all got pretty high natural fitness. They'll all be around 100%, I would have thought, for this game. So it's not a question of tiredness. It's just a question of the AO trying to keep its squad happy. So rather than having 11 players and then the whole rest of the squad become unhappy because they never play a game and leave, it would obviously cause massive issues in the way the game's set up and the way it buys and sells players. So the way they've kind of tried to address it is to identify certain games that they can get away with playing squads. Now, it doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but it means because Everton are one of those teams with the lowest reputations in the league, alongside 5 or 6 others, they're sort of earmarked as a chance of rotation. Now, Van Nistelrooy dropped out a few times. We've been here a lot. So far, it didn't happen against Bolton. It didn't happen against Southampton. It did happen once earlier in the season when Woolworth played. And they usually do it maybe 2 or 3 times a season max. So is this going to be one of those games? I don't know, but there is a chance. That's all you need to know, that Veron is often one of the ones who is left out when that happens. Usually Veron more so than Van Nistelrooy, but it could be any of their big names. It basically just decides which big names do we not need in this and which guys can I give a go to. So as Scholes is such a fantastic player in the game and is very unlucky not to get game time, it's just because Veron's better. He's got a higher reputation. He's got higher current ability. It does want to play Scholes. It just can't fit him in. So it sees these games as opportunities sometimes. Yeah. There's no guarantees.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be benching Man United players anyway. Not for the exactly. Not, so no. Maybe it might affect captaincy a little bit, but otherwise, just play as normal. I would say. I'm certainly not questioning my Man United picks. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they rarely get if they don't play, they often just won't be in the squad.
Yeah.
So you'd be incredibly unlucky to get a cameo. It could happen, but I rarely ever see it. So. But long story short, goes back to Heskibo's question. There's probably Veron will probably play, and he's probably a decent captain option. Is he the best? I'd still say Van Nistelrooy is.
Debatable.
And do you have to be aware that there's a chance they might drop out? Yes. Do you need to worry about it? I wouldn't really consider it. If it happens, it happens.
Really quick question from me, which I know is probably possible, but how often do both those two get rested in the same game? So Veron and Van Nistelrooy. There's a chance that can happen, right?
I looked about 35 games and I saw both get dropped out maybe 3 times.
Okay, I'm just thinking because what I've done a lot the last few weeks is captain one and vice captain the other. I'm just thinking maybe I go to a different game just in case.
I mean, yeah, it's maybe 3 out of 35. Okay. But the thing is, there's lots of teams like, for example, Arsenal are playing Fulham, and it's a similar situation. Occasionally, they'll just rest Henry. So even if you then decide to vice captain another good player, if it's another really good team against a team with 12 reputation, there's a chance that guy gets left out. So, I wouldn't factor in.
I'm going to have to put it on Kevin Phillips instead then. All right, fair enough.
Wise decision.
Wise decision. All right, next lot of questions. So we kind of already answered this one. I don't think we necessarily need to go over it again, but Alex Waterbaby asked, best 7 million or less striker, thinking Boxic with the fixtures. Are there other options? We kind of already mentioned that, haven't we? Unless there's anyone else. So Pedersen maybe. I think Pedersen's quite out of the box. I don't think many people have, even if they had him, they probably jumped off of him. Sheringham and... Boxic himself, right?
Yeah, I think Boxic is probably the standout pick because he's more of a goal hog than Teddy or Pedersen, and obviously he's probably more well owned, and they've also got a lot of home games in a better side. So I'd probably say Boxic is number 1. I'd then probably go to Teddy Sheringham just on the basis that Spurs are again more offensive than Bolton, and yeah, they've just got fantastic games. And then Bolton, just as a differential more than anything, Pedersen would be my third choice. Just again, great games. You can't rely on Bolton as much. They could easily just lose their games 2 or 3-0, for example.
Yeah, that is a bit of a nightmare. And yeah, so we'll leave. Yeah, we've gone through that one quite a bit. So next one, Flapjack. Who does Carboni replace at Chelsea, and is it good for Zola? Do you think, or is it just going to be mass rotation all around now, as there always already was?
This is tricky. So I went through a lot of my sims because Carboni quite often goes to Chelsea anyway. So it's really good to test it when it naturally happens, because obviously then we've got the Carboni's at a level, especially if he goes around the same time in the season, which he does on quite a number of my sims. You kind of can get a pretty good idea of how it will be utilised. Now, Carboni will nearly always play at either AMC, which is Zola's position, or midfield centre. And this is if he plays. So across the season, I was seeing stuff like 15 games and 11 substitutes on or something like that. So he's one of these players that if he doesn't start, because he's got a high reputation and a fairly good ability, he'll nearly always be on the bench. And because he can play 3 positions, midfield, centre, AMC and forward, he will very often be brought on. So unfortunately, Carboni can be very good at some other teams. I think he's gone to the worst possible team for us to utilise him. So I personally don't see him as an option. Now, it doesn't mean that in an individual game where he gets the AMC slot and comes in as a 6.5 midfielder, if you want to punt on it, he can do okay. He can. I mean, I've seen him score a hat trick against Kiev in the Champions League, for example. So it can happen. But for me, he's just too much of a rotation risk. He causes more rotation in the Chelsea team than we already have. His point about Zola, though, I do take. For me, it does improve Zola slightly because now, because his reputation and ability, the game always wants to play Zola. So now Zola usually ends up as a striker, and it affects one of Good Johnson or Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, usually Good Johnson. So it can improve Zola quite a bit. However, on the odd occasion, Zola will now be benched as well. So there's a little bit more benchings for Zola, but also a little bit more as a forward as a result of it. So if anything, I think it makes Zola slightly stronger because we've seen in AMC hasn't done that well. And it's not a particularly good position for in Chelsea's tactic that they use. It's better when Spurs use it with a double AMC. It seems to work better that way.
Like that does sound good for Zola. I mean, would you even keep him at this point? 3 away games in the next 4, which are Spurs, United, and Middlesbrough. So is he even worth keeping? I know he's cheap, but surely there's better options.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. I think it's more to do with over these next 4 weeks, people are probably going to see what's going on. If Carboni's getting more game time than we expect, for example, he's getting AMC every game and Zola's getting striker every game, suddenly after this 4 weeks, we might have an option. But I
Yeah.
can't see that happening. I just think it's going to change all the time. You're going to see a midfield centre, AMC, and benched Carboni, and you're going to see Zola flip between AMC and striker.
Cool, fair enough. And so next one is also about a pretty big team. Dan, FPL Chancer, who simply says, Liverpool, what is going on? So I think there was a lot of hopes rested on Fowler this week for a lot of people. I don't know if he captained it, but I know I saw a lot of people in the community were kind of getting on Fowler. So what's going on with them? Not doing well recently? Do you think that's a sign of things to come?
I mean, they've been incredibly unlucky with injuries. Obviously, that's been well documented all over their team. I think we're still. I mean, we're still fairly early in the season. Liverpool don't blow away teams as much as some of the other big boys. For example, when you look at their average goals scored over the season, even at home, there's 5 or 6 teams that are better than them at home for scoring goals. You then look away again. There's about 5 or 6 teams that they're close to, but they're just a fairly consistent side at sort of getting these 2-0s and 2-1 wins. That's really their strength in this game. You rarely see them blow teams apart. So they've just been getting on the wrong side of it a little bit. I think the injuries probably just haven't helped them. I expect come the end of the season, you'll still see them in the top 4, still ground out a number of clean sheets, and they won't have scored all that many goals. That's just typical of Liverpool. The other factor is you can't really pin down who their goal scorers, even when Owen's fit for the whole season, for example, and Fowler and all those, they rarely get to the numbers of some of these other guys like Viduka, Henry, Van Nistelrooy, even Phillips, other people like that. The goals were a lot more spread out. So it was flagged early season. Liverpool are a rotation nightmare. They don't blow teams away. They're a little bit of a minefield, really, outside of Hippier and Honcho. I think obviously Biscan at 5 million is great value as well. But for me, it's really Hippier and Honcho. I don't really like Fowler at all. I've run multiple sims where I've injured all the other forwards and just had Fowler for the whole season, thinking, well, that's the situation we're in now. Hopefully you can be good. And he was playing something like 30, 32, 33 games a season, and sometimes only getting like 8 goals or like 12, between 8 and 12. For me, that's just not good enough for
Not
a player
prolific
at his
enough.
price. I mean, the swing to that is he's obviously got fantastic fixtures. He's at home for a lot of them, and he's got more doubles than any other player. So if you are going to get him, now's obviously the time. I just, it's similar to the Canu punt for me. It wasn't one I was interested in because they're players that don't score that many goals overall for me, not
Like,
compared to the other boys.
but if you already own him now, would you use a transfer to get rid, or do you think you might as well hold on because of the
Oh, I
fixtures at this
definitely wouldn't
point?
be getting rid of him. I wouldn't be getting rid of him because obviously he's home to Leicester. He's then got. Oh, I just need to bring the fixtures up again because I've lost it.
Away to
He's
Charlton.
he's away to Charlton. Okay, so that's going to be free hit for most people. So you don't really need to worry about that one, but it's still obviously a particularly good game. And then we're looking at Derby Fulham, which is already now confirmed. So we've got double home Derby versus and Fulham, and then potentially is pretty unlikely, but the double at 17. Either way, it's still a pretty tasty fixture away to Southampton. So I certainly wouldn't be selling him. Just my advice is I don't really like him to buy in as your third option. It could work, but I prefer Hippier and Hencho.
Cool. So yeah, I guess if you're looking at bringing someone in, especially a striker, probably look away from Liverpool. But if you've got him, keep him for now. Okay, so loads more, and we're going back to Spurs again in a minute, which we kind of already talked about. First one's from Mr. CM Hints, aka Chief FPL Hints. Is it time to sell Kumas after this weekend? So give him one more game. I think it's Southampton at home, and then time to get rid, or would you just keep him? Do you think he's good enough to keep for a bit longer?
Yeah, that's again a really tricky one to ask because Kumas is never nailed in any of the sims I look at. However, that's from putting him in at the beginning, and when the AI signs him after a few weeks, he's obviously upped his reputation a bit. He plays for Wales. His ability's gone up. His stats go up. He's quite young in the game, so if they sign him sort of a little way through, he suddenly becomes an option for them. And as we've seen, I think he started every game or close to it. I think it might be every game since they've signed him, which was a surprise to me. And he's done fantastically well. So there's two ways I want to look at it. The Sims data tell me he's not particularly a good option. However, I'm aware of the fact that now he's signed at a different level. He looks like he's one of their first choice mids. So I wouldn't take one bad game as, get rid. I still think he's pretty good value at 6 million. And it's more if you look at those fixtures, again, if you're free hitting in 15, they've still got, I think it's 4 or 5 home games. So they're home to Southampton, home to Everton, home to Arsenal, home to Chelsea. Home games are your best chance for a midfielder to score. So they don't really score that many goals. And who else at that price is doing anything? So for me, it's either you get rid and you're going right down cheap because you're putting money elsewhere, or you just keep for those runs, for that run.
Yeah, maybe just not worth using a transfer on right now, unless you've got the luxury, I suppose. But yeah, keep him for now.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones you've made your bed now. I personally wouldn't have got him in the first place, but if you've got him, it makes sense to hold him for this run, I think.
Cool. And this one, I feel like, because I feel like we speak about Salakovic every single week without fail. And we talked about him last week. To be fair, what we did say is probably time to get rid because he keeps playing central midfield. And I think since then he's played 2 games as AMC. So this question from K Todorov: what is the chance of Spurs sticking with the formation they've played the last 2 games? And if they do, are Salakovic and Sheringham nailed in those AMC positions if they do? So 2 things. 1, do you think they're going to stick to it? And 2, if they are those 2 the nailed ones?
Okay, so Spurs' preferred formation is the one we're seeing now with the 2 AMCs. That is the one they will usually use from the very start of the season in most sims. And that's why we were all confused as to why Salakovic was playing midfield centre and thought he was going to be great, and it wasn't really working out that way. Now, most managers have 2 or 3 formations they'll use. Some have got more, and Spurs actually have that as well. They have obviously the 2 strikers up top, and they have the 2 AMCs. And if anyone noticed, their third formation is the same. They just switch the AMCs round and the striker. So last week, Rebrov was on the left, and the 2 AMCs were on the right. And this time, I think they were both on the left, and Rebrov was on the right, or vice versa. So that is their version of their change. So I can only go with what I know is that Spurs' preferred formation is the one we're seeing now. The anomaly was more what we saw before. I hope it continues, but as they have 3 formations and it doesn't really seem to play into who they're playing with Spurs, they can rotate them. So next week they could be back down to a flat 2 up front, and then the week after they could be 2 AMCs. You're just going to have to roll with it. My guess is they'll play AMCs more than they will the other one. And as a result, yeah, Teddy and Selakovic are usually the preferred two AMCs. Occasionally, you can even have Rebrov go as one of the AMCs, and they'll bring in either Everson as the sole striker, or even Armstrong, or even seen Gary Docherty use a 4.5 defender go up there when he gets back fit for the later. He's a defender and a striker, bizarrely,
As you
and
do.
he can, yeah, exactly, and he can bizarrely start playing up there. So they do all sorts of things. But yeah, Teddy AMC, Selakovic AMC, Rebrov striker is their usual go-to, and I would hope that they will continue that, because now Selakovic is coming straight back in for me. We've already seen in all the games he's played as AMC, I think he's returned all so far. And with penalties, as we've been through in this game, he is actually really good at penalties. I know we missed one, which was a surprise, if anything. He scored this one. And you can sometimes hit 5, 6, 7, 8. I've seen 9, I've seen 12 penalties in a season for certain players. So I think you just got to get these penalty takers in if you can, and hope that they hope that they get them.
Well, I think the fact you're bringing him straight back in kind of answers the question about how good he can be. Like because we did talk about him last week, and he was kept on playing in that CM role, which is why that's why you got rid of him 2 weeks ago, was it? Or did you already have him gone before them?
I got rid of him for Scowcroft about 4 or 5 weeks ago,
okay.
because so I didn't have him. So I've missed his 2 latest returns at AMC. I just wanted to make sure he was back at AMC before I went there, which it appears I wanted to see that Spurs were actually going to change to the formation I thought they were going to play. So now I've seen that they are going to do it and isn't just a massive anomaly. I'm all in. I think Selakovic has been underpriced. I think he should be like 9.5 million. He's one of the few he can score 20 plus goals from midfield. I mean, there's only Veron is the only other midfielder who can do that. And he doesn't. In his best seasons, he usually gets 17, 18. I mean, that's not to get too excited. Selakovic will usually get between 10 and 15 goals. It's just that he can.
That's
get
it now.
that with the added
Everyone's got you down as him having 20 goals. Next 20 games, 1 goal a game. They'll be on your case. Now, to be fair, I think you and loads of other people said the same about him. He's a really good player. That's why there was so much hype when he came into the side. So we'll have to see what happens there. I mean, he is one of the only few players around that kind of price. So obviously, Scowcroft's been good, but the fixtures are about to turn a bit. So, yeah, I'll have to see about him myself.
And he plays for a team that will go for goals in every single game. You know, Leicester have obviously had the games. You know, when that changes, it won't be quite the same. The only downer I'll say on Selakovic is his average ratings aren't particularly high. Even in seasons where I've seen him with 22 goals, he'll usually have an average rating of about 7.5 or below. So he's not really one for bonus. It's one of the, if he obviously scores in a game, he's got a decent chance for bonus. But if he doesn't score in the game, he's probably going to get you a 6 or a 7. Just the AMC role is not that favoured for average ratings. So there is
kind of all or nothing with him. Yeah. But I guess around that price, like you said, there's not too many players, and if you've already cheaped out elsewhere, then probably a bit of money to burn. So maybe now's the time to jump on him. Okay, I like this name. It's Joe is 9th in Championship Manager FPL. So I don't know why he's asking us questions. He's already got it sorted. So does fixture congestion mimic real life in a similar pattern that would support the argument for the tried and tested FPL strategy, which is a late season wildcard? So basically, I think he's saying, would you save your wildcard and free hit till late in the season? But I mean, I already feel like it doesn't follow FPL because it's already a ridiculous amount of double game weeks. We're only in game week 15. So what kind of happens towards the end of the season? Have you got any kind of idea about
that? Okay, again, this is one for Ben Crellin more than me. But going by what the guys who are running the stream say, what Ben says, I haven't particularly looked at fixtures. It's not my bag at all. I do more the game engine than anything else. But from what I'm told, 15 is likely to be our biggest double game week of the season, which is the one we're in now. I think around 32 is what I've heard. I think it might be actually 32. There's a chance that quite a few teams might have doubles, some of the better teams. However, it might not be as many teams as we're seeing now. I think we get our wild card in 19, and for me, I will just look to hold that until, like we see now, we get close to a double game week, and then the experts start telling us what's happening. The whole free hit thing, because it's more likely to be the better teams that are involved in the double game week later. You could argue it's a really good time to use it because obviously you can double up on all those guys. They could get really good scores, but at the same time, my argument might be, well, you've probably got all those players.
Yeah, that would be my thinking.
Yeah, so I think the free hit, if it's going to be used, is probably going to be more useful in 15 in terms of just getting sheer volume of fixtures. Again, the argument as to whether those players are going to do anything is another factor. But wait for Ben Crellin.
So wait a bit longer. But like, given that there's so many fixtures already, I can't imagine it's then the same as FPL later on in the season because that would just be ridiculous. So yeah, we'll have
No,
to wait.
I mean we've got a full. I mean we see Leeds have just got a double postponement out of nowhere. But what's more likely to happen with these, I think, is that there'll just be random doubles thrown in here or there for one team, like as we go along.
Makes it a bit more
So
interesting, I think that.
yeah, I agree. I'm one who don't like chips in the first place. I'd love to just roll with the punches, and we'd have none of those chips and just have to deal with it with either hits or not. But there we go.
Different conversation, different podcast. We'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll get you on to do that at some other point. All right, last few questions now. So thoughts on a free hit in double game week 17? I mean, I guess this really just depends on kind of what strategy you're playing, right, and how your team looks. Is there any kind of benefits to doing that over 15?
That's it, isn't it? It's going to be down to you as an individual. At the end of the day, there's confirmed doubles in there. There's Man United playing twice. There's Middlesbrough playing twice. The two of the best teams. We could have Liverpool and Tottenham as well. If you add those to the equation, I'd say there's a very strong argument for just getting loading up on them. Because the thing is, a lot of people will have dropped their Man United and Middlesbrough assets. They might not be able to get them back in time. I'm in a position where I hopefully can get them back in time, so I won't need to free hit. But I won't argue against it. But I just feel at the moment I should be in a strong enough position not to do it, and I think many people probably will be, having probably used it in 15, or save it for later.
Just looking at it really quickly now, like you said, that they are good teams that have got it, and not only that, you're going to probably want their players anyway. They've also got pretty good fixtures afterwards as well, so it's not it's not the same as 15 where maybe you want to drop them straight away.
That's a good point, yeah.
On my unexpert opinion, looking at it really quickly between 15 and 17, 15 does seem better, but there's probably some arguments for 17. Next question we're not going to go through because we kind of already have. Would you say Salakovic, in brackets, the troll? I think it's a bit harsh to call him a troll already. Or will we buy him back? You've already answered that. You're going to buy him back. We're not going to talk. We'll talk about him next week, I'm sure, because we talk about him every week.
He's back at midfield centre, yeah.
Yeah, he plays centre midfield for the next 2 games. And then FPL Beach Bum. We've already answered this one, actually. Which Liverpool assets are worth having for possible upcoming double games? You kind of answered it. You like the 2 centre-backs, Hippier and Huncho, and Fowler, maybe if you've got him, but you wouldn't necessarily buy him.
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it's going to come down to the individual, but Fowler, Bishkan, Hippier is probably the optimum setup that a lot of people will go for. I personally don't really like Fowler too much, and therefore would prefer to go Henshaw, Hippier, Biscan. I don't see any of the others as really a decent option. I mean, if Heskey was back in time, I'm not sure if he is or not. He could be a look, but I'm not sure whether he will be. And all the others, there's just far too much rotation for my liking. I mean, you could argue Dudek would be okay, but it's a lot to spend on a goalkeeper just to bring in for that week. I mean, if you sat on Bartes, for example, you might want to say, and they're home to Derby and Fulham in 16, that might be worth a hit.
Seaman is such a good price, isn't he? Though, like
exactly.
I know he hasn't got a double, but that price is ridiculous.
I agree. And then obviously you take the hit, you get those points, and then you're left with him, and then have to book a transfer in. And booking in transfer, well, unless you want to keep Dudek all season, booking in transfers in this game is not an option. Not for me most of the time.
No, it's pretty unpredictable. I don't want to live in a world where I have to rely on Emil Heskey for points. So I don't know how good he is in the game. I'm sure he's great, but
once upon a time for Leicester, he was really good, man.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. It's pretty harsh. He's probably one of those players where kind of all the bad thoughts about how much of an awful player is in my head when it's probably not fair, but I don't want to rely on him in either way. All right, cool. I think that's all the questions. Is there anything else you want to kind of talk about, or you good there? You want to lock it down blue style like last week?
No, let's not go there. Let's not do that one this time. I think we're good. There's a number of different ways. It's really exciting as to how this is going to go. I think you can't look at any individual week. I did okay this week. Free hitters will have probably done better. I think after 17, when most of the doubles have come, we're going to look back and we'll see which strategy worked out as usual in hindsight. But I think it's quite important to just take into account that, as we're all doing different things over these few weeks, you're going to see highs and lows in individual weeks, but it's probably after the 4 or 5 that is going to give us a real account of, how it went and how well you did. Hitting that free hit in 15 and hit as ever, every double game week, even in FPL, it doesn't come down to having all the players and the best players. It comes down to 1 or 2 players that you either had or you didn't, that usually did extremely well, and they usually make up whether you did well in that week, right? So good luck, everyone.
I won't even say anymore. I'll leave it on that great advice from our Championship Manager expert, Luke. Cheers for joining me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
We will catch you again soon. Cheers all.